A triumphant return for the captain. This is NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Sunday, April 27, 2025. Neil, when we go through the rundown in terms of which order of games we are going to do, we started yesterday deciding that Tampa Bay's win over Florida deserved top billing, unless the Maple Leafs swept Ottawa. And you could also make a case for the Vegas-Minnesota game. But by the end of the night, with the heroics of Gabriel Landeskog, the Avalanche captain, scoring his first goal in 34 months, it went to the top of the list.
Yeah, and a great performance put on by the Avalanche at home to tie that series up. It was a great team effort. All cylinders were going, including the captain. What a remarkable comeback. I mean, it harkens back to Mario Lemieux coming back to Pittsburgh after cancer treatment and being still the best player in the league.
For game number 4, Landeskog was moved from the third to the second line. But the night started with Logan O'Connor on a shorthanded situation, knocking Thomas Harley off a puck, breakaway goal, and then Nathan MacKinnon in the final minute of the first. And you could see in this game that the Avalanche pace was getting far more typical, and the only reason that this game stayed 2-0 into the second period was the goaltending of Jake Ottinger, who made excellent stops on Cale Makar and Brock Nelson. And by the way, for Makar, who I don't think has been at his best at this series, I thought this was his best of the 4 games.
And when he's playing his best, he's almost unstoppable, right? I mean, he is so fluid. He is so good. I mean, you talk about Paul Coffey in his day and what a fluid skater he was. Cale Makar is amazing, the skater. I can only imagine being his defense partner. You have to know and have to be able to read where he's going because he's all over the ice and he gets back to his position, but he's all over the place offensively. And you're right. He had a very good game. As obviously you mentioned Ottinger, he held them in. Had it not been for him, who knows what this score could have been.
The big goal of the night came at the 13:10 mark of the second period. Brock Nelson, who circled his own net and came all the way up the ice past every Dallas star. I didn't even think he had those kind of wheels, but a little drop pass to Landeskog, and he wired one over the glove of Ottinger to make it 3-0, and it was his first goal since June 20th of 2022 in Game 3 of the final against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The emotion that came out of the Avalanche, I mean, there were guys that were in the pile congratulating him, jumping up and down. And on top of the Avs pulling even in this series, the emotional jolt that this gives Colorado is something that's really going to be a challenge for Dallas to overcome.
Oh, definitely. And especially when we go back to the same subject again, that they've got the major injuries. Now, the one thing I will say is that Heiskanen was on the trip with them in Colorado, and you don't know, is he going to be back playing in Dallas? Because if he gets back into the lineup, that will give them an emotional jolt as well, because everybody knows the quality of player he is, and his teammates know what a great asset he is to the team. But you're right, going back there right now, the way the teams are currently composed, boy, that's a big advantage for the Avs going back to Dallas.
Let's sum up the second period. 22-5 in shots. And I thought this was one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant, of any period any club has had in the postseason. In the third period, Casey DeSmith replaced Ottinger, but at the end of the day, ended up 4-0. Samuel Girard wound up getting the fourth and final goal. Mackenzie Blackwood, his first career playoff shutout, made 23 saves. This game, Neil, I found as a combination of Colorado desperation coupled with maybe Dallas content to have regained home ice in Game 3 and just said, you know what? Got home ice back. we're not going to be at our best at this game. And the shots indicated that. 48-23 for the night and 93-54 in shot attempts. And on top of everything else for Dallas, their offense is dried up a little bit also. As a matter of fact, it's dried up a lot. Wyatt Johnston, Mason Marchment, Matt Duchene, Mikko Rantanen, no goals in this series. Rupe Hintz, Evgeny Dodonov, 1 goal. So there's some work to be done on the Dallas side.
And it just shows you how much they miss Robertson as well. I mean, who was their leading goal scorer this year. And they're going to have to pick it up. They got 2 games at home now out of the 3 remaining games. But, Vic, I don't see it. I picked Colorado to win this series, and I'm even more confident now that they will win this series. And when I say confident, I don't mean cheering for them. I just mean I think that that's the right pick. I think Colorado comes out on top in this one.
And the 5th game of that series will be played Monday night at 9:30. Another team needing a win to pull even, the Vegas Golden Knights. And they get a 4-3 overtime decision in Minnesota. This was quite a game also. A lot of back and forth, a lot of lead changes in the game. I liked Vegas's game, I think, a little bit more than you did.
Well, I didn't like their game in the second period. I just don't like their power play. They can't get into the zone. They want to carry it into the zone, and Minnesota just wouldn't let them. I just didn't see the team that I've been seeing all season in this game. Now, yes, they won in overtime, but that could have gone either way, and they could be down 3-1 right now to Minnesota instead of tied 2-2 going back to Nevada. Like, I don't compare this to the Colorado win. This was a pretty even game, I thought. As far as it went.
Shea Theodore opened the scoring with a power play goal, and we're going to talk about that in just a second because the Vegas Golden Knights did get 2 power play goals in this, but there's something about the formations that we're going to talk about in just a moment. After the Theodore goal, Marco Rossi tied this game up. That's their 4th line. So getting a little bit of offense, as we had spoken about with other series, when you get 4th line contribution, that's a big deal. Justin Brazeau and Yakov Trenin also involved in the scoring play. Trenin knocking Nick Hague off the puck on the forecheck. So great work by that 4th line. And then went ahead in the second period, and some blown coverage down low resulted in Marcus Foligno getting his 3rd goal of the series already.
You wouldn't expect that, right? I mean, out of Marcus Foligno, that's not what he's known for. But, he's been playing well. And again, you mentioned earlier, but I'm going to say it again, Ryan Hartman assists in all 4 games. So that's pretty good on those 2 guys that are known for other things other than offense.
So the game is 2-1 for Minnesota going into the 3rd period, and Nicholas Roy gets a power play goal to tie the game at 2 apiece. But the thing that I wanted to talk about here is when you watch this Vegas power play, Minnesota is playing very tight on Jack Eichel's stick when the Golden Knights managed to get possession in the zone. But I'm seeing a lot of things that Vegas is doing on their zone entries, similar to what Tampa is doing, is that 4 players are lined up on the blue line for Minnesota, and they're still trying to carry the puck in.
Well, if you won't chip it in or put it in, wrap it around, and just fight your way in and get the puck, if you don't like doing that, and we know teams that don't like doing that. Did I hear New York Rangers? Anyway, they don't like putting it in and going and chasing it. And I don't think Vegas likes that either. And they've been very successful during the regular season not having to do that because of the skill level of Hertl and Eichel and so on. But they're going to have to do that against Minnesota and in the playoffs because teams are going to make you muck it up.
And when you're playing 82 one-offs against, on many nights, lesser competition, you can carry the puck in. But these are the playoffs, and everything gets stiffer at this time of year. And despite the 2 goals yesterday, they're going to have to make some adjustments here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're going to have to, and they're not going to be able to just keep playing the game that they played during the regular season. Minnesota's caught on to it. And as I said, Vic, this could have been 3-1 right now.
It could have been, but Vegas winds up going ahead with 9:57 left. Mark Stone throwing a puck towards the net from the left wing boards, and Ryan Hartman is literally tackling Tomas Hertl. The puck goes off Hertl, puts Vegas ahead, but just 54 seconds later, Jared Spurgeon on a wraparound. That's right. It's going to become our new favorite player, at least for a day. Winds up tying the game. But was interesting here, Golden Knights started talking on the bench, maybe to challenge. And Bruce Cassidy did not. He refused to do what Jim Hiller did in Edmonton on Friday.
Yeah, he didn't want to take that chance. What's funny is everybody is watching all the other games when they don't have a game that night. Yeah. It's hard to watch the games the same night because you're getting your team prepared and so on, or the game is over and you're leaving and the other game's going on. But the games on the off nights, you're watching them. It wouldn't surprise me that was a good warning to Bruce Cassidy and others. Like, make sure you're for sure before you do that.
I didn't think they had anything anyway.
No, I didn't either. And obviously they didn't. I think one of the players backed into the goalie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think it would have been called goaltender interference.
From there, the goaltenders took over. Aiden Hill stopped Trennan on a breakaway in the third period. Great stop on Matt Boldy in overtime. Philip Gustafson stopped Riley Smith in the third and Keegan Colasar in the extra period. The Wild actually had a power play in the overtime, failed to score. And then on a Jake Middleton turnover at 17:26 of the extra period, Ivan Barbashev has got a Stanley Cup ring with the St. Louis Blues and just one of those great middle six forwards gets it done.
Yeah. Again, guys that you're not used to seeing come up with big goals. I mean, that's not household names. So Barbashev was around the front of the net when the puck squirted loose and he was able to bat it in. I felt bad for Jake Middleton. It was a horrible turnover.
It was.
In overtime in a playoff game. So feel bad for him, but that's how the Vegas Knights got the win.
Vegas had a 46-32 edge in shots, 91-71 in attempts. And I believe they started to show signs of coming out of it in this game, and now they bring this series back home for a fifth game, Tuesday at 9:30. And I'm going to expect this momentum to continue.
I think so too. But I think that Minnesota's going to have to make some adjustments because they were badly outshot in that game, and you can't expect Philip Gustafson to come up with, what amounts to 42 saves in a game, every game. You're going to have to, do things to try to help Gustafson along.
The Ottawa Senators stave off elimination, 4-3 overtime win against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Jake Sanderson gets the winning goal, 17:42 of overtime, shot that found its way past Anthony Stolarz to his screen. Tim Stützle on the power play and Shane Pinto on shorthanded got the Sens out quickly in this game. And Jake McCabe actually saved this game from going 3-0, from getting a puck off the goal line. So this was the kind of period that Ottawa really wanted to start this game.
Yeah, they did. And the Pinto goal was, as you said, shorthanded. The Leafs had 5 forwards on the ice. Pinto chipped it by Marner and then outraced Matthew Nyes, who himself got a terrific breakaway goal later in the game. And Stützle, of course, gets his first playoff goal in his career, as did Pinto, as did any of the young Ottawa Senators that score in this series. It will be their first playoff goal because they haven't been in the playoffs, but great shot by Stützle on the power play. Unbelievable race down the ice by Pinto to get that shorthanded goal. And the Senators looked really, really like they wanted this game bad. They weren't going to go down 4 straight.
But in the last minute of the first period, John Tavares tips in William Nylander's shot. And then you mentioned the Nyes goal, blowing past Artem Zub. I don't know if Zub is pylon in Russian, because that's how quickly he moved past him.
Yeah. Well, Nyes is quickly turning into the core five. Instead of the core four, they'll have to have the core five because Nyes is becoming an invaluable piece of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
RFA.
Yes. Yes.
The Leafs had a 9-1 edge in shots in the second period, but at the 7:32 mark of the third, Linus Ullmark made a big save on William Nylander, and in the process, Brady Tkachuk blew up Pontus Holmberg in front of the Ottawa net, and on the ensuing rush, David Perron gets the go-ahead goal, and it looks like Ottawa may be able to win this first game for themselves in the series.
Perron, who's been around a lot of different teams, right, and he's played a lot of playoff hockey, is an important ingredient for this young team. He's in everybody's face all the time, and he can also score. So we saw it there. And you're right, Tkachuk. Holmberg was standing still, and the puck just came down to him, and Brady Tkachuk came chest first right into him and just, knocked him right on his keister.
Just trucked him. However, 7 minutes later, the Leafs tie the game. Sweet pass, east to west, William Nylander to Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And this game is headed to overtime, as our buddy Jack Michaels would say.
Oliver Ekman-Larsson, imagine 5:29. You're in the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa. It looks like you're going to get this victory, and then Ekman-Larsson scores a tying goal, and it's, oh no, not 3 games in a row. If you're a Senators fan, you're sitting there on pins and needles.
Even more pins and needles early in the overtime because Drake Batherson takes a double minor for high sticking on Chris Tanev. And a couple of components about this upcoming Toronto power play where they have got a chance to win the series. John Tavares had gotten dinged in somewhat of an accidental collision in front. He's got to leave. So in his place, instead of 5 forwards, Morgan Riley is on. And so the power play's got a little bit different look to it. But what I noticed that with the double minor, as opposed to a single minor, the Leafs were almost too deliberate. There wasn't that same urgency there that you might see just on a single minor penalty. And they were unable to capitalize.
That's a great observation because you don't come out with the same amount of urgency on a 4-minute power play that you would come out on a 2-minute. They don't have John Tavares for that power play, and who's a real important ingredient for this team, and especially on the power play. So that's a great observation. I totally agree.
I thought this was the Leafs' best game, and you can make the argument for game 1 that it was 6-2, but the shots still favored Ottawa. But in this game, they outshot the Senators 34-21, won 57% of the faceoffs, were better on 50-50 pucks. But I think from the Ottawa perspective, they showed their resiliency, and they got a result that maybe they deserved earlier in this series, particularly in game 2 and 3.
And I don't think we're giving enough credit to Ullmark as well. I think Ullmark was really good. Ullmark was better than Stolarz in this game, which is saying a lot because Stolarz has been great for Toronto, but I thought Ullmark was really good against Toronto.
Game 5 of this series will be back in Toronto Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And if you're the Leafs, you absolutely, positively have to close this series here. Because if you don't, you know what it was like to have 54 years of history going against you. And now the entire history of the Leafs drought starts to manifest itself if they don't get this done in Game 5.
That's right. And if you're Ottawa, that's what you should be seizing on, is the fact that they're going to come out and be a little bit tight. Now, today's players aren't thinking about 1967. Today's players aren't thinking about the drought. Today's players are thinking about, we got to win this series. We got to win this game. We got to get this over with. But the fourth win is always the hardest win to get in a playoff series. And this will not be easy in game number 5.
Tampa Bay and Florida played the third game of their series down in Sunrise. The Panthers having won the first 2 games, and they were looking to put a stranglehold on this series. Brayden Hagel was suspended for his hit on Alex Barkov in Game 2, so he was out for this game. Barkov was able to go, and the Panthers also welcomed Aaron Ekblad back, his first game since serving a 20-game suspension for violating the Performance-Enhancing Substances program. But it didn't matter, because the Lightning get off the mat with a 5-1 win.
And they did it later in the game. Like, you know, when you're watching this game, the way the game started out, you're like, Florida, could do this. They're intimidating them. They've got Kucherov so far off his game. And then Jake Guentzel started to do his magic.
Let's backtrack a little bit, because this one didn't start well for the Lightning any more than the first 2 games did. Misclear by combination of Ryan McDonough and Eric Chernak. That led to Matthew Tkachuk's goal at the 2:43 mark. But what impressed you about the way the Lightning managed to stabilize the game? Because Florida got some other good chances, but Andrei Vasilevskiy held firm, and it seemed at that point the Lightning gradually started to get their footing in this one.
Yeah, they started to get their confidence as Vasilevskiy played better and better. And he played just like he did with the 2 Stanley Cups. He was a rock in the net there. And there was no downer for the Tampa Bay players. There was no like, we've been working so hard and now that goes in. So there was none of that in this game. So then when they got their opportunities, they were opportunistic. The first goal by Matthew Tkachuk for Florida Panthers, or the only goal for Florida Panthers really that came early and gave them the 1-0 lead, was a little bit lucky the way that the thing turned out and ended up on Tkachuk's stick all by himself. But slowly, as you said, they got their legs under them. They still don't have that unbelievable power play going that they had during the regular season. And I'm still saying that the best scorer in the league, which is obviously Nikita Kucherov, is not on his game. He's just off his game still. But even with him off his game, I mean, he got a couple of assists because he plays with Guentzel. But even with him off his game, they were able to come up with the 4-1 and then 5-1 with the empty net.
He actually had 3 assists in the game, and the thing I want to point out on the first goal is Florida has really been on him and not giving him a lot of room. And the first assist that he got, the goal was originally credited to Guentzel, and then it was found to have glanced off Brayden Point. But he did a great job maneuvering in traffic to get the puck to Guentzel so that he could take that shot.
He is an absolutely highly skilled individual, and when you're not noticing him, it almost feels like he's not playing well. But he did get 3 assists, which for anybody else would make him first star of the game. But I don't think, knowing the way that Kucherov can play, I still don't think he's up to his level.
Perhaps not yet, but you can see this game starting to turn a little bit in Tampa's favor midway through the second period. Nick Paul, who always seems to get big goals in the playoffs, puts the Lightning ahead 2-1, and then probably the key turning point was in the third period. The Lightning were about to go shorthanded, and they were playing 4-on-4 to start the third, and Guentzel from McDonough and Kucherov 21 seconds during the 4-on-4. So before they went shorthanded, they managed to get that 2-goal lead.
And that really put a dagger in Florida at that point, because that was just, you just came out of the gate, you're ready to go, you're going to take over, and boom, they've got another goal. So that was a huge one for Florida. I'm really impressed with Guentzel today. I mean, he's not a big guy, but boy, he has the kahunas, doesn't he? They couldn't back him down at all. And I know we're going to get to this. They hit the late hit later in the game.
We are. But before that, I want to talk about the back-breaking goal, which was scored with 5:41 left. And it's the fourth line getting it done. Luke Glendening, Yanni Gourde, and Gage Gonsalves. And this was just a really good pass by Gonsalves in center ice, springing the 2-on-1. And then Gourde across to Glendening, who went high on Sergei Bobrovsky, who had a couple of rough breaks today. But that goal was a brilliant passing play, and also something that when you get that contribution from the fourth line, it just makes everyone feel so much better because it takes that heat and the visibility off your top guns.
100%. 100% right. And that Glendening goal was a work of art. And the fact, and you've already mentioned this, that the big man got the goal earlier, and that really helps because you're not always going to get goals from Kucherov, Gensel, and Point. You can't depend on that every night, and especially in the playoffs. So Nick Paul getting that goal, as lucky as it was, because it was an errant shot. And then went in off of Bobrovsky's skate. And by the way, the Gensel goal, the one that he did get, not the one that got given to Point, that was a little bit of fortunate bounce there because it literally did bounce in front of the net. And when Gensel swiped at it, it hit the top of his stick, which roofed the puck over a small window above Bobrovsky's shoulder, which was a killer goal. So today, I think the Lightning had good luck in their favor.
Kucherov, Gensel, and Point. 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points on the day. Each of them only had a point in games 1 and 2. But one of the things that we had spoken about was their power play, which continues to struggle. 0 for 5 in game 3, 1 for 13 in the series. One of the things that I noticed was that the Panthers on the penalty kill are lining 4 players up across the blue line, and Tampa Bay likes to carry the puck in. They're not a dump and chase team with that group out there on their first unit. And so I think that's part of their problem, is that they are trying to literally carry through a wall to set up their plays.
I noticed the same thing. It was Rover, come over. You know, that game you used to play in the schoolyard. And that's what they were. The four red jerseys lined up along the blue line. And it was like, okay, how are you going to pick your way into this? And even the skill of Kucherov, Gensel, and Hedman and those guys, that's a really tough go. So they're going to have to make adjustments on that because Florida definitely doesn't want them using all their skill.
And some controversy in the final 5 minutes of this game with Matthew Tkachuk taking a major interference penalty against Jake Gensel, who had just gotten rid of a puck, to Anthony Cirelli, who wound up scoring the 5th goal into an empty net. This one has a little bit of the same look as Hagel hitting Barkov in game 2. Suspendable?
I think they're going to have to. I don't see how you can not. In the same series, it seems like, I don't think this was egregious as Hagel. I don't. But this was very late. The game was out of control. It was 4-1. There was no reason to hit Gensel. He did it the way Tkachuk does everything. He's sending messages all the time. Every shift he's out there. But I think this one was too late. And Gensel's lucky that he didn't really get hurt. He hit his face on the ice, but he was okay. One thing I want to mention is that was the 5th goal and made it 5-1. Obviously, then Tampa had a 5-minute power play with 5 minutes to go.
Yep.
I don't think they were really pressuring to get another goal. I think they were like, let's get this game over with. So they didn't want to poke the bear any more than they'd already poked it. So they just played the 5 minutes out and everybody went off the ice, I think, without a lot of controversy. Every whistle, there's some controversy with these two teams.
Gensel went down the tunnel towards the end of the game, but he did come out for the post-game interview. So all indications is that was probably just a precaution. Maybe the protocol spotter said, take a look at this guy, but he managed to come out, do his interview, looked fine. And I'm wondering if that plays a role into whether or not Tkachuk gets suspended, as silly as it may seem.
It shouldn't. Gensel could have gone into the locker room and feigned that he was hurt. He could have done that. Barkov didn't miss any time. I mean, he missed the rest of the game, yes, but he didn't miss the next game. So I think it's very similar. You're never going to find two exactly the same. I think it's pretty similar.
This is a war again, and Tampa Bay really responded in this game. What does Florida do now in Game 4 to hold on to home ice? Because the worst thing you could do, go into somebody else's barn, win 2 games, and then hand home ice advantage right back.
Absolutely. And I just think that Florida's got to just stick with their game. I think if they just stick with their game, they're going to be fine. But don't take these bad penalties. And both teams took stupid penalties. I think it was Anthony Cirelli who hit Ekblad over his own goalie and cross-checked him. And that was silly. That didn't have to happen. I mean, if you're the coaches, you got to be pulling your hair out of your head. But it is a war. It's a great series. Game 4 is going to be exciting to watch.
Monday at 7 p.m. 4 Game 4s on Sunday, all of them on TBS. Starting off with Winnipeg and St. Louis, the Jets lead this series 2-1, but the Blues got back into it with a big 7-2 victory in game number 3. Nikolai Ehlers remains out for the Jets, but Gabe Vilardi skated with the team in a non-contact jersey, but he is now listed as a game-time decision for game number 4.
And he'll be missed if he's not in the lineup. So he'll be a great addition if he is in the lineup. And I guess that decision will be made by a consortium of people, including the team doctor.
Scott O'Neill wrote this one off as, we just lost the game. But the reality is St. Louis came out, used the home crowd, used the home advantage, got on top in this game early, and really never let up the entire game. What kind of pushback do you expect from Winnipeg?
I think there'll be a big pushback from Winnipeg. They'll try hard to push back, but then St. Louis knows that's coming. So it'll be very interesting. I mean, it's sort of reminiscent of what's going on between Minnesota and Vegas, right? I mean, the two teams that are playing, Minnesota is the wild card team going against the first place Vegas Golden Knights, and they're giving them a handful. And the same thing is happening with St. Louis, and Jim Montgomery's team is doing all the right things. I mean, don't forget, it took Winnipeg overtime to beat them in game 2. So it's going to be really interesting game 4.
This may be the most even of the 8 series that we have seen thus far. And I know that margin is pretty narrow, but when you look at the 2 games that were played in Winnipeg, St. Louis could have won one or both of those.
Absolutely. And they know that, and that's what's giving them confidence going back there. And that's how you do come back in a series, is when you know definitely that you could have won the games you lost. If you get blown out, like St. Louis did to Winnipeg, actually, you know you weren't in that game. You know you got to work and do a lot different things in game 4 than game 3.
Once again, that game will be at 1 o'clock on TBS, and following that at 3:30, Carolina at Jersey, with the Hurricanes leading 2-1, but the Devils getting back in the series on Friday with a double overtime win. But on the injury front, Luke Hughes and Brendan Dillon will remain out for game 4 for the Devils, and Jonathan Kovacevic, undisclosed injury, his status is in question. He played only 6 minutes in game 3, so essentially, the Devils played the majority of that game with only 5 defensemen, and they are really starting to thin out on the back line.
And that's usually in playoffs where you do thin out, where you do get your injuries. We always say you need a lot of defensemen to play the war of attrition in the playoffs, because they're the first guys to go down, are the defense, because they're constantly, taking hits and blocking shots and so on. So the Devils, I give them all the credit in the world for winning game 3 against Carolina with a very depleted lineup.
You thought the Hurricanes were a little bit cocky in this game, and they certainly played on their heels for the entire overtimes, which bled early into a second overtime. What do you expect from Rod Brindamore's group in game 4 that we perhaps didn't see in game 3?
Just to get out to a faster start than they did. I mean, obviously they got a really slow start in New Jersey, in that game 3, and he's got to have his guys come out and compete hard right off the bat, and like they do when they're at home, because you don't want to go home with this tied up. You want to go home with it 3-1.
The third game will be at 6:30, Washington and Montreal. And the Caps still hold a 2-1 series lead, but home cooking was pretty good for the Canadiens, 6-3 on Friday night. And the big question here is who's actually going to start in goal for both clubs. Logan Thompson did not skate in the optional skate on Saturday. Dylan Strome, who actually hit Thompson with his stick before Thompson had to leave the ice, believes that his near fall when he tried to get up, meaning Thompson, may have been more a lack of balance than a leg injury. But whether or not he plays in Game 4 is still in doubt, as is Sam Montembeault, the Canadiens goaltender. His status still in question as he is still being evaluated.
Well, and Thompson couldn't skate off the ice. He needed 2 guys to help him to the tunnel, and then he needed somebody in the tunnel to help him down the tunnel. So I don't know what Strome's talking about with that, or that's just a cover for his team, but his leg was definitely hurt. And when you look at the replay over again, you'll see his leg bend in behind him. So I would be surprised if we didn't see Lindgren in net for the Caps.
Whoever plays goal there, the Caps need to start playing 60-minute hockey again. And I don't think that we have seen that really over the course of the entire series.
I don't think so. And I don't think we're seeing the same Caps team that we saw, for 5 months during the regular season that were so dominant, that would win at home, win on the road, win every way you want to play. And I don't know. They could very well go back to Washington with this thing 2-2. There's no reason why Montreal can't win Game 4.
Montreal is excited, they're juiced, and like we said on Saturday, they're playing with house money right now, so that's a great feeling for them. It's not going to be like this all the time, but their young players are playing well, and everything about this team feels good in Montreal this season.
Yeah, and you're right when you call it house money. They don't have anything to lose. They are the 8th seed. They were the last team of the 16 playoff teams. They were the last team to get in. Everybody's thrilled that they're in the playoffs. I mean, just the fact that they're in the playoffs when it ends will be that they had a great year. Everybody is going to have had a great year. So, that's a great way to play. I mean, you're going up against a team that's stacked against you, and you're just having fun. And you're winning games, and it is so much fun when you're able to do that.
Remember the last time these two teams played, it was a similar situation, 1 versus 8 in 2010, and the Canadiens came back from 3-1 down to win that series in 7 games. And Alex Ovechkin remembers that all too well.
Well, he would. He was there. He's probably the only one that was there off of this team, but the whole group has had such a remarkable regular season, but I still say that they got thrown off by the grade 8 chase, and we'll see what they do in Game 4. If they can win Game 4, that pretty much tells you that they're definitely winning this series.
The final game of the evening will be Los Angeles at Edmonton. The Kings lead this series 2-1. But let's see if the momentum has really changed in this series based on the ill-advised challenge that Jim Hiller made on the game-tying goal by Evander Kane. And then when he lost the challenge for goalie interference, Evan Bouchard scored 10 seconds later for the go-ahead goal and the one that put the Oilers ahead to stay. This is quite a series so far, to say the least. The Kings' power play has been tremendous. I believe they should be up 3-0 in this series. And they have just had struggles holding on to leads in the third period. And maybe it's just that Edmonton offense starts to get into their heads a little bit when the momentum in a game starts to swing.
Perhaps, and perhaps, too, what you said about the Jim Hiller's ill-advised challenge on the goal. Had he not done that, and then obviously Bouchard wouldn't have got a goal 10 seconds later on the power play, it would have been tied and everything would have been normal. But I think that can get into the players. And you're saying like, oh, crap, now we got to kill off a penalty. You don't kill it off, and you're behind suddenly. So I think the Kings are got to get back to their game that they were playing in the first 2 games in LA.
we've seen signs of that, really, in all 3 games to this point. But the only game that was a true 60-minute effort was in Game 2. I want to go back to Edmonton for a second. Calvin Pickard was okay during the course of the evening. I believe that in the third period, he was actually quite good. But I think you have to stick with him now if you're Chris Knobloch, because they won with this guy. They didn't win with Stu Skinner in games 1 and 2.
I think you have to stick with him too. You got to ride a winning horse. I was surprised that he put him in after the way that, Skinner had played this season and played last year's playoffs. But good on him. He put Calvin Pickard in the net. He took a chance, and Pickard played well enough to get them the win. And I would be really stunned if he did not start in Game 4.
You know what time it is?
Time for history?
It is. This date in Stanley Cup history. And we take you back to 1994. And I guess we're doing a lot of celebrating of the Buffalo Sabres because they haven't gotten into the playoffs in 14 years. And here's another Sabres item. April 27th of 1994, 2 of the greatest goaltenders in NHL history squared off in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. Dominik Hasek defeats Martin Brodeur in a marathon quadruple overtime classic. Hasek stops 70 shots in the game. Brodeur stopped 49. And Dave Hannon forced the 7th game of this series with a backhander from in close at 5:43 of the 4th overtime. It was the 120th shot of the game and the only one to get into the net.
Wow, what a couple of iconic goaltenders going. That's a great one. A great day in NHL history.
The Devils went on to win Game 7 2-1. And had the Sabres won that game, I believe it would have prevented a lot of angst for you later in the playoffs.
Oh, I think so. But we're here to talk about the Sabres.
Fair enough. Thanks for joining us today. Please subscribe, like us, and remember that our website is NHLWraparound.com. On Monday, we have NHL Wraparound, and we'll be joined by longtime executive and current Columbus Blue Jackets senior advisor, John Davidson. So enjoy the hockey on Sunday, and we look forward to also having you join us for Wraparound on Monday.